Hey, everybody, this is Jeff Revilla. Welcome to my guest tonight, episode number one. This is the most special episode we will record because we can only do this one once. And I got a great guest, Kenny Barnwell. We're going to hear his story tonight. And I'm going to open up with what he sent me to really pitch himself to be on the show. And I love this opening story because it's going to hook you for the rest of this episode. He says, I got a great story. It sounds like it belongs on the show. Last year, while on a music tour in Mexico, I was ambushed by 6 cartel members on motorcycles. I ran, got shot out, and had to jump off a mountain to survive.
It's my guest tonight with Jeff Revilla, where the stories run deep and the stakes get realer. This week's guest took a hard wild fall, shining in Mexico. It's Kenny Barnwell. He followed a butterfly and lived to write. Don't miss his story on my guest tonight. Good night.
Kenny, welcome to the show. The theme song written just for you.
Oh man, I am honored. How about it? Nice to be on here, Jeff. Thank you so much, man.
I'm so glad to have you here. You really hooked me in with this story. It's an incredible story. We're going to go on a journey, I think, in the next half hour. And, I opened up with this scenario where you're in Mexico, but let's go back to how did you get into Mexico? What were you doing? Was it work? I believe it might be music related, but what took you down to Mexico in the first place?
It was work related. I ended up going down there on tour with a band. I've done event production, setting up shows around the world for a little over 20 years. In fact, last year was my 20th year touring with different bands, and that's how I made it down to Mexico. We were actually finishing a Mexico South America tour run.
Very nice. And so I'm guessing somehow did you get separated from the band? How did you get into the situation that I opened with this story of, here you are, by yourself in Mexico?
Well, it's crazy, man. And thank you again for having me on to share this, Jeff, because I've only shared this a handful of times. This happened last August, so we're not even a year anniversary on this. And so I'm just now kind of through recovery of what happened to me physically, a bit mentally, obviously, and able to kind of just now tell this. And so thank you again for allowing me to come on here and share this crazy story with your audience. So I was down on tour in Mexico with this band, and how I ended up getting separated. I really wasn't separated. We had just finished up a couple of days in Mexico City. We did a couple of shows down in Mexico City. We headed over to Monterrey to do our last 2 shows in Monterrey. And I don't know if you've ever been to Monterrey, Mexico. Have you, Jeff?
No, not yet. But
okay.
Well, this will determine if I go or not.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I've been traveling down to Mexico a lot over the last 20 years, you can imagine, a dozen times. In fact, I've actually been to Monterrey a half dozen times in the last probably half dozen years. And we ended up making it to our hotel at about 5:30 in the evening time, still daylight. And Monterrey is beautiful, man. Like big mountains, think like California style mountains, very rocky, deserty. Lots of thorns and cactus and rocks and snakes and scorpions and that type of landscape. But on this valley, in this valley area, it's real touristy, like skyscrapers and beautiful city. And there's like high-end shops and hotels and all of that. And then it's kind of old Mexico on the other side of the mountain. Well, last time I was coming through was like wanting to go hiking in these mountains because I'm a big time hiker. When you live a fast paced life on tour, it's like hiking forces you to slow down, literally one step at a time. Right. And I'm also a fitness guy. And I was at the time doing a fitness mental toughness program called 75 Hard. Have you ever heard of that, Jeff?
Yeah, just a bunch of my teammates at work just did that at the start of the year.
Oh, no way. Okay. So you've got some context. Well, for your listeners anyway, 75 Hard by Andy Frisella. It's you end up doing 5 things every single day. It's like 2 45-minute workouts. One of them has to be outside. Hint, hint. And then you drink a gallon of water. You read 10 pages of a nonfiction book, and then you follow some sort of nutrition diet plan and no alcohol. And so I was actually on day 14 of 75 Hard. I love to do it on the road because it's tough. It's tough to schedule it in, and also it kind of helps you stay in line. The old story of sex, drugs, and rock and roll out on tours. It's not completely gone. It's it's definitely out there, but the influence is very easy to kind of get loose with your physical and mental health on the road. And so I kind of get in front of that by doing things like 75 Hard. And when we arrived at the hotel about 5:30 in the afternoon, I get up to the hotel room. I dropped my bags and I looked out my back window, and our hotel's like right on this mountain, kind of base of a mountain range. And I see this trail that goes up to the top of this mountain ridge, and there's like a dirt road up top. And I needed to go and do my 45-minute workout. And I thought, man, how perfect. I could just go run up to the top of this mountain, maybe run up the road a little bit, take some photos of the valley because it's absolutely beautiful, and then run back down, finish my 45-minute jog, hit the shower, and then go to dinner with the guys. And so I pretty much did just that, man. I put on my running clothes. All I had was like my running clothes, shorts, t-shirt, my water bottle, and my headphones, my phone, and my room key. Didn't tell anybody where I actually was going because Kenny always goes on a run. He's the fitness guy. He's always going. Not to mention, if you look at this trail, you'll see like everyday people going up and down this mountain. Like I saw people that were families, old people in scrubs, obviously coming down to work at the hospital. It looked like it was a bunch of locals that would kind of traverse this trail to go up and over the mountain to work on the tourist side of the valley. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like it seemed safe enough to me. I'd seen it last time I was there. And so I did just that. I grabbed my stuff and I headed out of the hotel to this hiking trail, which, by the way, was only a block and a half away on the backside of my hotel. It took me about 10 or 15 minutes to hike to the top of this trail. And I get to the top of the trail and I hike up the dirt road a little bit, and I start taking pictures of the valley and taking pano pictures. And I mean, it's just beautiful. The sun was not quite coming down just yet. And so the sun was, it was still just a perfect time of day. And again, I didn't necessarily get separated from my people down there, but it just kind of naturally happened to where I was headed up to the top of this mountain ridge to go on a run. So to answer your first question.
And and doing things like that are normal for you, right? You would normally go on a run or explore a local area. That's not out of the question to be somewhere and try to get a taste of the local flavor.
Well, right. And look, when we're traveling through these different countries, they tell us like, hey, certain countries are like super, dangerous, and you got to stay at the hotel, close to the hotel. And you're privy to that. Not to mention, you're also very aware that the cartel in Mexico run that country. Like, they're so embedded throughout the entire country. There's not one cartel, obviously. There's a handful of cartels. I'm not even certain how many, to be honest with you, but it's palpable that there are certain areas in Mexico that you just simply don't go. But in my mind, I'm like, well, this is just right behind the hotel, like a block and a half away. I can see my hotel, so all should be good. But what I didn't know, Jeff, was that the neighborhood on the backside of this mountain range was one of the most dangerous favelas neighborhoods in all of the Americas. Like the city of Monterrey sits in the state of Nuevo Leon, which is just south of Texas. And so it's like cartel land, right? Just south of Texas. But I didn't know this. And I had been to that same hotel, in fact, not even that long prior to this. And so anyhow, I'm up there, I'm taking some pictures, I'm listening to a podcast, And I start to walk back to the trailhead that I had just hiked up. And when I did that, I was walking along, and all of a sudden, this motorcycle was right up on me, like startled me, but like right up on my right side. And I looked over, and there's two guys, like men, not teenagers, but men on this motorcycle. And they were kind of motioning for my phone, like basically, give me your phone. They're like saying, hey, pictures, let me have your phone. And I just kind of played dumb. So I just kind of pointed to my podcast, like, oh, I'm just listening to a podcast. And I kept walking because I had my water bottle in my hand, and I kept walking just with urgency at this point. And so as I'm doing that, the steep mountains on my left, I'm on this dirt road. Well, one of the two guys had jumped off the motorcycle and was like walking real fast right next to me, and kind of saying, give me your phone, essentially. I didn't speak Spanish, so I didn't know exactly what he was saying, but he was motioning for my phone. And I, at that point, it startled me. Clearly, I was like, oh, whoa, dude's right up on me. And I looked back, and the other guy that had been driving the motorcycle had parked the motorcycle right in the middle of the street, had jumped off, and was kind of slow running at me with this small boulder in his hand. And he throws it at me. And I kind of ducked, because it came right past my head. And my instinct was like, I'm out of here. Like, screw this. I'm out, And so I was trying to make it back to that trailhead. So I started taking off running for my life. I've got two little babies at home. I got two toddlers, my wife at home. And so I start taking off to try to make it down to that trailhead. I was going to scoot down the trail. Like, I was just trying to evade these guys. And then all of a sudden, another huge stone comes right past my head. It kind of clips my left ear, and it calls me to fall on the dirt road. And I don't know if you've ever fallen on a dirt road before, but like gravel in your hands and in your knees. I was wearing just running shorts, and my headphone ears popped out. My headphones pop out. My water bottle busted, and my phone busted right at the top of the mountain on that road. And I go to pop myself back up because I hit hard. I mean, I was running for my life, man. And I go to pop back up. When I did that, I look back and I see two more matching motorcycles with two men apiece on them hauling ass towards me. And I was just like, man, I popped up, started running again for my life. And that's when I started hearing the gunshots. These guys, crazy, man. I don't know if you ever been shot at, Jeff.
Oh, luckily, thankfully, no, but I couldn't imagine, being, somewhere new, not in an environment that I'm familiar with. I see boulders, I'm running, I spent 20 years skateboarding, so I know about gravel and sweat and all that dirt sticking to you. And now you're hearing the pop sounds, you're hearing the gunshot sounds.
Yeah. Well, I hear the first shot, and that's really all it took, man. Like, at that point, I knew I wasn't going to make it. The one guy that was running next to me, he's pretty hot on my trail, not far behind me. The other guy's running after me. When I looked back and I saw those two other motorcycles with four guys on them, and they started shooting at me, my instinct was like, I'm not letting them kidnap me. Because in your mind, you're thinking, this is the cartel. Like, it, like, they're not going to let me live. You hear the stories, especially as a traveler in these countries. It's like, you hear the stories. These people behead people. They kill Americans all the time and disappear them, and I'm like, I'm not letting them kidnap me, and especially with who I was with, I'm high profile, to be honest with you, with the artist that I was with. And that actually the artist's name was on my water bottle. And then, not to mention, they get my phone, they use Face ID to open it. Like, that stuff's kind of going through your mind, And I just thought about my kids, man. And so I'm running, and as soon as they started shooting, I just jumped off the mountain. And when I did, because of the forward momentum and the steepness of the mountain, as soon as I go to try to land on the side of this mountain, it snapped my femur. And then I rolled about 30 feet, and I slammed into this cactus. And of course, I'm covered in cactus. I go to try to stand up because here they are, right? They're still going to come after me. and I just collapsed in pain, like the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Never felt anything like this because I'd never broken any bones before. And I heard the snap of the femur when I went to land, man. Like that's how loud and painful it was. So I go to get back up, I collapse again, and it breaks my left forearm. And I roll another like 15 feet. I drag myself into this thorn bush, and I'm like try to collect myself for a minute. And I could hear the commotion. I hear the other motorcycles finally arrive, like right above, where I had leapt, and they're all yelling at each other. And I could kind of like see a couple of the guys go towards the trail that I was working to get down, where I had come up, and they had went down the trailhead, I guess, to cut me off. And I was in this thorn bush, and I collected myself. I was like, what the, this is insane. Like, I've got kids. I even yelled that as I was flipping down the mountain. And I'm in this bush, and I look at my arm, and it's like my bones pushing out, not like out of the skin, but it's like pushing out. And I thought, well, maybe it's dislocated. So I went snap. I ended up snapping my what I thought was a dislocated elbow. It was really just snapping the two bones back into place. And I assessed my hip, and I was like, man, I can't walk. Like, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, man. And so I'm like, I get my bearings. I'm like, I look through the thorn bush at the top of the mountain, and I start to see two of the guys start to kind of like make their way down to where I had fallen, to try and see where I had fallen, because they clearly didn't see me, and they didn't see where I had landed. And this was a type of mountain that like you didn't just cut through it. Like it was very dense thorn bush, cactus, aloe plants. Like there's, I watch a lot of Naked and Afraid and Discovery Channel and stuff. I'm like, I know that there are, banana spiders and tarantulas and scorpions and rattlesnakes in this kind of, landscape. But this stuff's going through my head, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, what do I do? Do I sit here and just like, maybe they'll find me, or do I like try and move? And if I move, are they going to hear me, And I just cried out to God, Jeff. I was like, God, I said, please, if you want me to live, please, God, tell me what to do. Please save me. And at that moment, this hummingbird literally flies right in front of my face and starts feeding on this flower right in front of me. It was so beautiful. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, so beautiful. And at the same thought, I'm like, God, you are a comedian. Like, here you are showing me this beauty and this chaos. I said, God, please, like, if you want me to live, please tell me what to do. And the craziest thing happened. This monarch butterfly flies right by my left shoulder. And I hear this loud voice yelling at me, follow the butterfly. And this butterfly goes towards this even denser thorn bush. And I just put my right arm down. I put my left arm down. And with this divine strength, I just drug myself and pulled myself into this even deeper thorn bush, which, is ripping me to pieces, of course, But then the butterfly lands on the inside of this thorn bush, not afraid of me. It's not startled by me at all. It lands on this thorn bush. And so I stop and I kind of cower down. And about a minute and a half later, here comes one of the guys right around that bush. And I was like, this is crazy. And I look across the valley, and the bottom of the sun was touching the mountains in the distance. And I just kind of internally, I was like, I got to wait till night to move again. And to be honest with you, man, that's when the craziness actually started. Like, I know, I know all of that.
That's
like,
the starting point.
Like, I know all that's crazy, man, but like that's when it really, really got crazy and really got tough, because these guys at this point, man, they were hunting me, and I couldn't walk. I had a broken arm, and I'm sitting there with cactus all in me, embedded into my skin. I've got, nothing to eat, no water, no phone, no way to call for help, and I had to trust that I'm doing the right thing because I didn't know what to do. And by the grace of God, I just follow that butterfly into that thorn bush, and like I'm sitting there and they're all around, like these 6 guys. They're, you hear the motorcycles, you hear the yelling, they're yelling at each other, talking to each other. They're looking in bushes, and I'm just like cowering in this dense thorn bush, waiting till dark.
Man, I'm on the edge of my seat. It's like, okay, like it's starting to get dark. They're still looking for you. I don't know how far up the mountain this whole trail is, but you got a while to get back with a broken leg, a broken arm, to get back to the hotel. So and it hasn't gotten crazy yet.
Well, it's certainly crazy, and I ended up, I'm sitting there, and what's really crazy is my hotel is a block and a half away. Like the mountain's so steep, the hotel is like right there. I can see the entrance, people pulling up. I can hear the rooftop bar playing the music. My room was on the 9th floor. I could literally see my hotel room. The curtains were open. Theirs was my hotel room. I saw my single water bottle I had sitting on my table. I could see it from the mountain. And I'm just like, it might as well have been a million miles away, And so I'm in this bush, and I just like, once when it gets dark, I go, God, what do I do? What do I do? No one knows that I'm out here, and these guys are hunting me. My wife's at home. I'm feeling so sad for my kids that their dad got himself into this situation, but I had this deep sense of gratitude that I didn't die, that I didn't hit my head on a rock when I was flipping down the mountain, and I prayed to God, and I just heard the voice again. It said, keep moving forward. And so once when it got dark, I did just that, man. I would put my hand down and my foot down, and I would scoot on my butt and my lower back as much as I could. Crazy pain. Sometimes it would take me 2 hours to go 10 feet, 15 feet. And I kept having to like switch sides of my body because, my back would get ripped up. My shorts and my shirt would start to get ripped up or roll up my back and my whole lower back. So I'd flip on my side until that was all, rashed up. And then I, flip on the other side best I could, but my right hip was broken. And I'd flip on my belly sometimes and just try to like pull myself on my stomach. And of course that's ripping myself to pieces. But what really was crazy is I started to rip my only hand up, like my couldn't put my left hand down because it's broken, my forearm's broken. And so I call it a gift from God. I found this rock. Actually, I have it right here in front of me. I brought it home with me off the mountain. For anyone viewing this, you can see this is the rock from the mountain. This is the type of rocks that was on the mountain, but I found this rock and it fit my hand perfectly, perfect enough to use this to leverage myself so the ground and the thorns and the rocks and everything wouldn't dig into my hand. But what was so crazy?
It almost looks like an arrowhead shape, like
crazy.
It's like flat disc shape, and it fits
Perfect.
perfectly in that grip of the palm of your hand. So
it's crazy.
Just to paint a little picture of what it looks like for people listening.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because like it even fits between a couple of my fingers. And in fact, it's still got some of the wear from the mountain. And I would use this rock, working my way through, and it was insane challenges, having to get over, over logs or around rocks or around trees or through bushes. I had to stay in the thorn bushes the majority of the first handful of hours. Jeff, I spent 12 hours on this mountain that night. And this rock, I would lose it. It would like fall and roll down the mountain or whatever. But then all of a sudden, it would show back up. This rock kept showing back up. I would drop it. It would roll. It would go somewhere. I would lose it. I'd keep moving forward. And then it would show up again.
That's incredible.
Crazy, man. And so what was even crazier is I'm going through all these challenges. I'm trying to move forward. And of course, I'm, sobbing for my family, my kids. I'm like, they need their dad. I'm also trying to my best to be grateful of what I did have still going for me, I mean, most people are trying to climb mountains in their lives. I'm trying to get down one. You know what I mean? And I would get to like a challenge, around a tree or over a rock or over some bundles of sticks or through another thorn bush. And, my leg would be turned one way, or I'd be so rashed up on one side, I couldn't get through it. And I would give up, man. Like I would just like, they're just going to have to like send a search party the next day and tell my wife that I'm missing and like all of this. I don't know, like I'm done. I had nothing physically in me, and I would lay my head back in the thorns. And then I would get these visions in my mind of like how to overcome that challenge in a way that I hadn't considered yet. And then the voice again would wake me up really loud. It would say, keep moving forward. And I would wake up, and then I would get this divine energy, this divine strength. And I would literally do the obstacle in the way that I had envisioned. And this happened time and time and time again. It was so crazy. I could see my hotel. There it was. And I would look at it and I'll be like, man, with the pace that I'm moving, I might never get there. I might never reach my hotel. Like, I don't know. It might literally take days because like I'm sometimes moving 10 feet and it felt like an eternity. And, I would give up and I would get the visions, and then I would get woken up with the voice and I would push forward again. And I was like, I got to stop looking at the hotel. It's overwhelming me. And I was like, I need to shorten the goal. Like if I could just focus on the next rock, if I could just focus on the next bush, focus on the next tree, there was this wall that I was trying to work towards. If I could just focus on the wall, and shortening the goal like that really helped me dig in and like go through this motion of, pushing myself forward or dragging myself or pulling myself forward, reaching the obstacles, giving up, getting the visions, hearing the voices, pushing forward again. And then when the minutia of all of that got tough, I would look at the hotel again and be like, okay, I'm getting closer. I can make it. I can make it. My family, my kids, they need their dad. And I would just get this immense sense of gratitude, and it was probably, I don't know, maybe 2:00 in the morning. I was a Boy Scout. So like, I know that when the moon's up high in the sky, it's about midnight. Once when it passes over, it's past midnight, it's probably about 2:00 in the morning. I made it to the wall. And on the edge of this wall, which was this compound around this house that was right on the street that I was working my way towards. Now, I couldn't go towards the trailhead, obviously, because those guys were probably over there. They were probably still waiting for me. And but eventually I had heard, maybe around 11 o'clock, midnight or so, the voices stopped, and all you could hear was neighborhood dogs, barking in the distance. And so I had to go through this really precarious way through all these thorn bushes and all of this treacherous landscape. And I make it to this wall, and on the back side of this wall was another gift. There was this tire that had a pole sticking out of the middle of it, like concrete and a pole sticking out of the middle of it, that I was able to kind of pull myself up on. And I pulled myself up. I'm kind of standing up on my one leg and letting the kind of blood flow back to my hip, my right hip, and the breeze. I could feel the breeze, and I'm just like, like, thank you, God. I've made it this far. I probably have about, a third left to go before I hit the bottom. I thought, man, I'm at the wall. So now I could just like hug the wall. Maybe I could hop. I don't know. Like maybe I could hop. I don't know. Like this whole time I've been dragging myself. And then I look up at the top of the mountain, and it looked like they had like turned floodlights on the back of a handful of these houses. And I see about 6 floodlights at the top of the mountain. And I hear like dogs barking even louder. And then all of a sudden, these 6 lights start coming down the mountain. And I was like, oh no, that's them, man. Like they're coming back, because clearly I didn't pop out at the street yet, I was like, they're coming back after me. And so I go to like, try to like gently pull myself back down to sit down, but I crashed, because I couldn't, just the way I was broken, and I just crashed back down onto the rocks. But fight or flight, I'm back in retreat mode, and I'm pulling myself down along this wall. And I was like, I'm just going to stick along the wall. And what I didn't know is this wall was extremely tall, and there had been these gullies, these kind of deep gullies along the wall, that I got to the top of the first one, and it was pitch black dark down there. And I couldn't see the other side of it. And I was like, if I go down this gully, I might not be able to get back out. Like, I can't hug the wall. I'm going to have to go around it, and I don't know what's around it either. But I obviously opted to go around this first gully, and I go around this gully, and I hear the dogs getting closer. I hear the men getting closer. I'm like out of anything, and I'm in this kind of thorn bush, not dissimilar than the first one, but even less dense, like very thin. They would see me, and so I surrendered. I was like, this is it. All of this fight, and this is how I'm going to die. And so I just flipped on my back, because that's, the only part of my body that I could lay on at that point. I didn't even have enough energy to roll over, Jeff. I was depleted, man. And I covered up the logo on my shirt, this big white logo that I had on my black shirt. And I just prayed to God. I said, God, please don't let them find me. And now in my mind, I'm thinking, they have dogs, they're going to find me. I mean, you're not going to retreat from dogs, I said, God, please don't let them see me. Please make them blind to see me, Lord. And Jeff, man, one of these guys with his dog was about 10 or 12 feet from that bush, and they walked the other way. Like, they didn't see me. I'm like, this is crazy. And I thought maybe he's coming around or something, like, cause I could see him. And if I could see him, he could probably see me. Like, he's that close. I could hear him breathing almost, because it's so quiet out there, aside from the dogs barking. And I was like, the dog didn't see me. This is crazy. And so I just stayed there. I laid there. I don't know, 40 minutes probably went by. I was just laying there, and they walked on. I saw the lights walk back, checking out other bushes, other areas, walking back up towards that trailhead around the wall again. I was like, whoa, man. Like, God, that's when I knew that God had other plans for me. That's when I knew that this experience was a God experience. There was no reason that those guys didn't see me at that point. No reason. So I just continued on. At that point, I heard the same thing, keep moving forward, and I got this divine strength, and I start to go, and I start to move forward, and I see this stick, and this stick had like a Y at the top of it, and it was perfect to fit under my shoulder. And I thought, man, like, this is a crutch. Like, I'm just going to use this crutch. I can start to see cars on the road. Like, I'm getting that close. Like, this is great. I'm just going to start to kind of crutch my way around. And as soon as I took that first hop, I just came crashing down, slam right on my body again. There was no way I could walk. I mean, no way I could walk. And so I started to drag myself again. And I was at a crossroads. I'm like, if I go this way, more dense thorns and just craziness, but the wall's right there. And I know that the wall does hit the street, because I've seen it when I was headed up the mountain. And so I was like, I'm going to go head towards the wall again. At least if I could just stay parallel, maybe not on those gullies, those dips, which probably was like kind of like water wash or something along this concrete wall. And it was like concrete with barbed wire across the top, like someone's personal compound, And when I got to the top of one of these gullies, the moonlight was kind of shining through. And I was like, oh, at the bottom back of that gully where it touches the wall, I could actually see where I could go. Like, if I go down this gully to the wall, I might be able to follow the wall actually all the way out to the street. I could see a little bit through the moonlight. I was like, it's dark in there, but I could see the other side. I was like, you know what? I would rather try to get to that wall, because if nothing else, I could stand up again and let the blood flow. Like, I felt like I was going to pass out constantly, And remember, I came from Mexico City. I got up at like 5 in the morning, the prior morning, flew in from Mexico City on 75 hard, which means you're not even just doing keto. You're not even eating. You know, I had no water. I had no nothing. My mouth's dry. I'm starving. I'm hurting. I'm broken. And, you know, fight or flight, obviously a lot of blood, you know, drainage from just trying to escape from being hunted, which is crazy, and shot at and all that stuff. And so I decided to go down this gully. And as soon as I slid down this gully, Jeff, I look over and in the moonlight are all these aloe plants. And the first thing I see was this huge snake. And this sucker was probably forearm like girth, you know.
Oh, wow.
This thing was like a baseball bat, okay, man. And it was laying along the aloe in the moonlight. And as soon as I went down, I looked over and I see it. I'm upside down looking at this thing, and it's probably like 3 feet from me. And I was just like, Mr. Snake, I am just passing through. Like I literally am talking to this thing. And I was just like, I'm just passing through. I'm just trying to get off this mountain. And crazy enough, I ended up spending almost 3 hours in that gully, right near that snake. And that thing never messed with me. It moved a little bit here and there, but it must have knew that I was like in distress or something, because it didn't move at all. But that was one of the most treacherous areas because there was all of these crazy bushes and brambles I had to get over. But I will say the aloe. So I would break off some aloe. Two things going through my mind. I've seen Discovery Channel. There's banana spiders that live in these dang aloe plants. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like going, but then I'm like, at the same time, I'm just like, screw it. Like my mouth was like sandpaper, man. And so I broke open the aloe and I would eat the aloe. And I was like, oh, like so nourishing to eat raw aloe. But I guess aloe must have some sort of protective mechanism because at the same time, it dried me out even worse, man. Like the aloe gel, like, I mean, it might have like my whole mouth was like hairspray or something. I don't know, but crazy. It was sustenance, which much needed for the energy for the rest of this trip. And so I'm getting through the gully and I make it over these brambles and these bushes and eating more aloe. And I finally make it to the wall and I'm going along the wall on my stomach. I couldn't stand up still. I was afraid to stand up because I would come crashing back down. I couldn't sit down, you know? And so I move along and there's this tree right along the wall. I'm like, oh, great. Like this tree with thorn bushes on one side, this tree blocking the narrow path around. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to stand up. But on the other side of this tree was another gift. There was this bucket. And so I climbed up, pulled myself up on this tree. And I was able to like pick my right leg up and put it on the one side of the kind of the tree. So I shimmied around and just kind of sat on this bucket. And I was able to sit on this bucket for a little while to kind of get my bearings. And at that point, the sun was starting to come up. Like it took me that long to get this far on the mountain. I still hadn't came off the mountain yet. And there was, again, plenty of times where I was going to give up. Obviously, I'd lay my head back. I'd get the visions. I would get the voice saying, keep moving forward. And I would make it through those challenges. Not dissimilar to this one, but there I was at the end of the mountain where it met the sidewalk in the street. And I was like, thank God. Like I'm so close, you know, I'm so close. As soon as I can make it down the street. At this point, I'm probably like 2.5 blocks from the corner and then another 1.5 blocks down the street to the hotel because I had to come down a different way on the mountain. But then I was like thinking, man, they're probably just down here waiting on me. Like I'm going to come out and they're going to just be waiting on me. You know, they weren't going to let this gringo that was up there taking pictures go, you know? And so I was like, I got to go. I got to keep moving forward. And at the very end of this was about a 8 to 10 foot kind of drop that was covered in grass, like real tall grasses. And at the very top of this grass, another gift. I call them gifts because they randomly showed up and they gave me exactly what I needed in the moment, much like this rock, which I still had, by the way. I had used the whole time. And I found this half of a plastic bin and I was able to stick my head and my shoulders in this bin and slide down the last 8-10 feet on my back, but my head and shoulders are in there. And the bin kind of separated the grass just enough to kind of like push the grass out of the way so I could slide down. And as soon as I slid down, I'm upside down. This car comes by and does a K-turn right on me. You know what a K-turn is?
By the way you just described it, I'm uncomfortable with what it just did.
Well, a K-turn is just an old school term for like doing a K to back up in the middle of the street,
Okay,
right?
okay.
And so instead of doing a U-turn, it has to do a K because they were wanting to go the other way. So this car pulls up and headlights, ironically, or coincidentally rather, right when I was upside down in this bin on the last bit of the mountains, they pull and their headlights shine right on me. And I thought, oh, shit, is this them? And I look, and me and the driver and the passenger seat guy make eye contact. And there was like 6 or 7 guys that were in construction vest that were like, just kind of like looking at me like this, all wide-eyed. And then they just back up and left. Now, clearly they were just construction workers going to work in the morning. Sun was coming up and they made a wrong turn or something. But like that happened like right when I popped out. So I come out onto the sidewalk. I'm looking going, are they going to be here? And then finally I needed to cross the street to the other side of the road because that's where the hotel was. And plus I was still on the same side as the trail that I started on. So I needed to cross the road and I couldn't walk. So a car would pass by. I would be nervous that the car would pass by, obviously, because I didn't know who was who. And I drug myself as fast as I could. I would count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, drag myself across to the other side. And I would make it to the other side. I'm just like, man, at that point, my body is like a big scab. Front to back, both sides, shoulders, like a big scab because I drugged myself, along all those rocks. And I was like, I got to drag myself another 2.5 blocks, 3, almost 4 blocks back to the hotel to make it, if I was going to make it, if somebody didn't get me before then. But what was so crazy was I got another gift, man. God gave me another gift, Jeff. On the 2 blocks from where I was to the corner, there was this layer of hay. Now, literally nowhere else, not on the same side, on the other side, not anywhere beyond it or before it, only on the 2 blocks that I had to drag my body was a layer of hay, which provided enough cushioning and enough extra slide that I could drag myself down this sidewalk with a little bit of relief, man. Like, what? Crazy. It took me almost an hour to go 2 blocks to drag myself along that hay. And of course, the whole time cars are coming by. Some of them I would kind of duck on. Some of them I like felt okay to kind of put my hand up. Like I couldn't talk really. I was like, help, And finally, I saw people coming to park their cars and walk down the road to go to work. I saw at this point, every pull, every drag forward, I was getting closer and closer to the trailhead that I started on. And I was like, man, this is crazy. And I would see somebody come out of the trailhead because like I told you, it was a local commuter trail. And somebody would come down the trail and I would kind of hide like this, And then I would keep dragging myself, counting to 10, 1, 2, 3, And then finally, there was a young guy that I could hear him talking on his cell phone because he was talking on speakerphone. And I kind of was like, help me. And he turned around. I got his attention. And so like he was like said something to the person he was talking to, kept him on the phone. He kind of hesitantly walked across the street to where I was. And I was at that point, I was directly across from the bottom of the trailhead. And I said, listen, I know I must look crazy. You don't have to help me up or anything, but can you please go around the corner to that hotel and tell them that one of their hotel guests was just attacked and he can't walk. And so he, understood what I was saying. He goes down and goes to get him. And that was about 5 to 7 minutes of one of the scariest, slowest 5 to 7 minutes of the entire time. Because here I am, completely lifeless, laying there looking at the trailhead. that I started this journey on, just waiting for one of those guys to come walking down. But fortunately, by the grace of God, their hotel vehicle pulls up, and, they were just in shock that this happened to one of their guests, and they pulled me up into the hotel vehicle, and they pulled me down to the hotel, got me some soda and some water and a little sustenance. I was just so grateful. And I just thought about my family, Jeff. I almost died, man. And they went to go and get the people that was in the camp with me. We call them campsite on the road. And they go to get the tour manager, and he was just in shock. He just couldn't believe it. Me, the positive guy, the exercise guy, the fitness guy, like the guy that's like, good things are happening too in his life type guy. This happened to me. And the security guy, they graciously gave me one of their security guys to stay with me because the Mexican police were there. I'm like, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything, because you don't know. You hear like Mexican police could be involved, like, and so you just kind of like, I didn't see or hear anything. And I just called my wife on the security guy's phone, and she didn't answer, of course. It's about 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, and I just broke down. I left her a message. I said, baby, I was just attacked. I'm okay. I'm headed to the hotel. I love you. And they took me to the hotel, or to the hospital, the local hospital, assessed the damage. They honestly were like, man, this is a miracle you were alive. Not just obviously because of the crazy descent down that mountain, but the fact that I snapped my femur right at the ball. And they said that there's some major arteries that run through that hip. And they were like, it's one thing snapping your femur, breaking your hip, fearing that these arteries could break, but they were like, we would recommend that you would never move if you hip, because you could rupture one of those arteries and have an aneurysm. And they were like, so surprised I didn't die on that mountain from an aneurysm. And so I make it back. The artist that I was with sent a private medical jet to fly me out of the country. And I did not feel safe until I was finally back in Tampa. And I ended up getting a full hip transplant. I have metal arm. Oh man. But I got my life, man. And I'll say for anyone listening, man, if you, God forbid, you don't go through some crazy leap off a mountain like I did and get attacked by a cartel and, be hunted and all that. But I'll tell you this, we all have our own crazy things that we go through in life, and they're unexpected. And, you got to keep moving forward. You got to trust. Sometimes you got to surrender. Sometimes when you do surrender and follow the butterfly, in my case, you got to go through a deeper thorn bush, one that's even worse than the one that you're in before, just to get to safety. And sometimes you got to stop looking so far in the future, like I did with the hotel, and start shortening the goal so you can actually make it through the challenges that you're after, man. Because you're stronger than you think you are when it really matters most. I'll tell you that, but you just got to keep moving forward, Jeff.
And kind of what does the future look like? Or, I'm assuming you might still be going through some sort of, rehab and still getting things back to normal. This was less than a year ago. So
yeah,
maybe you're not at 100% yet, but taking these lessons and the things that you're talking about now, where do you see yourself taking those into the future?
Well, I'll tell you, I have such a heart to help people work through their own challenges and better themselves. I'm writing a book about the situation. It's called Follow the Butterfly. And just want to, speak and help people understand that, these tough things that we go through, they don't define us. They refine us into being better men and women in our lives. And for me, my relationship with God and has gotten stronger. My relationship with Jesus, I'm a Christian. And I'm just so grateful now, the joy through it all, despite obviously having a titanium hip and metal in my arm. I had some amazing physical therapists that helped me get stronger. And of course, hip transplants are amazing. I was up walking the same day. Now, obviously it took a long time to get to the point now where I'm at now. I mean, I can't still run or anything like that yet. I'm blessed to still be able to, like, pick up my kids, and, I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so, moving forward, it's just a lot of talking about it. Like I told you, this is the first probably 5 times I've ever really told this story in its entirety. And I want to continue to tell it more through this book and through any, opportunities that I get moving forward to do so as a speaker. And, I'm no longer touring, not because of that, but because a little over 20 years of touring and traveling the world was enough. And, I always felt like I was already on my way out to want to do more. I've written a couple of other books that were industry books, and I've done coaching, career and life coaching for event crew. And so I wanted to make this transition anyways. And it looks like God kind of helped me make that decision a lot more concrete. And so it's really just pursuing that, getting this book out there. It comes out in August. The 1-year anniversary is August 24th. And so followthebutterflybook.com. You can check it out. It goes, publishes then. And, speaking on more stages and hopefully inspiring more people to keep moving forward.
Amazing. I've seen on your social media too, you started to share some of the photos. People can connect with you. What's the best way if people want to connect with you or bring you to their stage? How can they reach out and find you?
You can go to kennybarnwell.com. You can also join the wait list for the book. It comes out at followthebutterflybook.com, or there is a link for that wait list as well on kennybarnwell.com. That's my speaker page. And if you're interested in, having me come and share this story with your audience, I'd love to do it. Love to share how, faith and grace saved me on that mountain.
Amazing. Kenny, thank you so much for sharing this story. This has been an incredible first episode. I don't know how we're going to top this going forward. I'm so grateful that you're able to even just talk about this and share this event that has happened with you is incredible and a great feat of strength, and will inspire other people to do their own journey, to, take those little steps to get things done and accomplished. And it's such an incredible story. Kenny Barnwell, kennybarnwell.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure's mine, Jeff.
Let's hear that song one more time.